Good morning everyone. Basa na tayo natin libro guys. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 12 January 2023. History of the Filipino People Part 4. The American Period. Topic number 15. The Period of Suppressed Nationalism. Nandito tayo sa paragraph Early American Colonial Policy and Filipino Nationalism. Yung mga walang libro, pwede na kayong manood sa akin dito. Educational naman ito para to sa ating history. Long time ago. Okay, Early American Colonial Policy and Filipino Nationalism. Basa. Many Filipinos, particularly Apolinario Mabini and the Irreconcilables, did not believe in the sincerity of American protestations of friendship and concern. This feeling of doubt was especially reinforced after the United States Congress passed the Taylor Resolution, which disclaimed any American interest to exercise sovereignty, jurisdiction, and control in Cuba and failed to include the Philippines, which logically by reason of its distance from the United States should also be liberated. Moreover, civil government had been predicated on numerous unfounded statements that the Filipino people were willing to accept a government under the supremacy of the United States and that Aguinaldo's government had become very unpopular with the masses. In the face of mounting Filipino opposition to American rule, the military and civilian authorities who were determined to assert American sovereignty in the Philippines determined to assert American sovereignty in the Philippines implemented a policy of repression that, in the eyes of the people, rendered the benevolent pronouncements of the two commissions sent by McKinley and the Bill of Rights granted by the Taft Commission nothing but a farce and an empty promise. On December 20, 1900, less than 6 months after these guarantees to freedom were made by the Americans, General MacArthur issued a stern warning that all those who had been abetting resistance against the constituted authorities would be harshly punished. The military enforced strict censorship of the press. Ulitin ko guys. The military enforced strict censorship of the press, which included the suppression of news information gathered by American correspondents assigned to the Philippines. On November 4, 1901, the Philippine Commission enacted the Sedition Law, which made any advocacy of independence or separation from the United States, whether by peaceful or forcible means, punishable by death or long imprisonment. Ay, grabe oh. Punishable by death or long imprisonment. The enactment of the Sedition Law constituted a serious challenge to the Filipino nationalists who risked their very lives to win independence. Punishment of the Irreconcilables. The conservative elements of the Malolos Republic deserted Aguinaldo even before the hostilities broke out with the United States and enthusiastically indicated to the German Commission their desire to collaborate with and serve in the autonomous government proposed by the Americans. The forces of conciliation led by Trinidad Pardo de Tavera, Cayetano Arellano, Felipe Buencamino, and Benito Legarda testified before this German Commission that the Filipinos were not capable of independent government and recommended the complete Americanization of the people after peace had been established in the Philippines. Mabini and several uncompromising nationalists refused to collaborate with the American authorities. Mabini in particular urged the Filipino people to fight the new intruders even if the struggle were futile, so that the future generation, while praying over our tombs, will grant us thirst of love and gratitude, not of bitter reproach. Consequently, The authorities regarded Mabini and his group a threat to their pacification campaign, their continued residence in the Philippines being an encouragement to the guerrilla warfare being waged by many Filipinos and an open threat to the power and authority of the Americans. The authorities deported on January 1, 1901 the intransigent patriots or Irreconcilables, which included besides Mabini, Artemio Ricarte, Pablo Ocampo, Maximo Hizon, and Julian Gerona. Guerrilla resistance against American rule. General MacArthur reported to the War Department in 1901 that while it had been suggested that the great majority of the Filipinos longed for peace under an American government, such a claim was not well founded, for the Filipinos were organizing for further desperate resistance by means of a general banding of the people in support of the guerrillas in the field. The Filipinos, far from regarding the fall of the Malolos Republic in the light of calamity, regarded it as simply a transition from one form of action to another. Tingnan nyo guys, ulitin ko yung ano na to ha. The Filipinos, far from regarding the fall of the Malolos Republic in the light of calamity, regarded it as simply a transition from one form of action to another. The people continued to wage a determined war of attrition against the Americans. In 1900, more than 70,000 American soldiers held a still vigorous enemy in check. And on July 4, 1902, when President Theodore Roosevelt granted amnesty and proclaimed that the insurrection had ended, more than 120,000 American soldiers were still fighting the Filipino guerrillas. Throughout the first decade of American rule, armed bands who claimed they were continuing the revolution harassed the American military forces. In 1902-03, Simeon Ola fomented an insurrection that necessitated the sending of American soldiers and the Philippine Constabulary to the Bicol region to subdue the uprising. The failure of the Americans to contain Ola's rebellion forced them to declare an armistice and to negotiate with the rebel leader. Ola, however, broke off negotiations with the Americans and continued the resistance with a large number of new adherents recruited during the armistice. Ola surrendered to the authorities in 1904 and was granted executive clemency by Governor William Howard Taft. Guerrilla resistance was so widespread in the Philippines that while they were apparently unrelated to each other and seemingly lacking in direction due to a tragic lack of able and cohesive leadership, it could not be denied that all those uprisings during the early years of American rule were part and parcel of a national movement to overthrow American sovereignty. In the Visayan provinces, particularly in Cebu, Samar, Leyte, and Panay, Papa Pope issue-led rebels called Pulahanis in a hit-and-run warfare with the Americans. In Leyte, Papa Rayos proclaimed his intention of throwing out the Americans and at the head of a ramshackle army established an external municipal government. Ramshackle army yan guys Of a ramshackle army established an external municipal government of which he was the acknowledged Generalissimo and Viceroy. He announced that he would work for independence, which when attained would bring an an end to forced labor, taxes, jails, and constabulary depredations. On the other hand, the disaffected masses of Cavite, Batangas, Laguna, and the lower part of Tayabas, now Quezon, regarded by the military as fanaticals, continued to fight the Americans even after an amnesty had been proclaimed. A religio-political organization called Santa Iglesia carried out sporadic warfare with American troops stationed in General Luzon. New Katipunan associations in the Ilocos, particularly that led by Valentin Botardo in Paway, organized themselves into military bands to oust the Americans and declare Philippine independence. The loss of prestige of the Catholic Church and the deterioration of agriculture and industry gave rise to marauding bandit bands that roamed the countryside, with whom the rebel forces were unfortunately identified. The military authorities, even as the stigmatized the real guerrilla leaders by branding them as bandits, recognized the massive support given by the masses to the resistance in the form of continuous voluntary contributions which continued even after the organization of civil government. Siguro hanggang dito na lang guys, bukas na tong Sakay and the Resistance kasi mahaba-haba rin. So yun. Bye everyone, God bless.